Hi everyone, my name's Alex Reeves, and recently on the Facebook page a few people inquired about how Leon jury fished. I was fortunate enough to know Leon. I only fished with him a handful of times, but I shared a similar passion for targeting big snapper in the reefs around Taranaki. I wasn't nearly as good at it as he was, but I eventually had some success. This video isn't about my fishing prowess, it's simply about sharing a bit of knowledge that was passed on to me. Hopefully you find it useful and you have some success with it yourself. You can take it or leave it. It's not everyone's cup of tea to fish in the reef. You will lose some gear, but there are ways of minimising gear loss. And bear in mind, if you're really keen on catching a big snapper surf casting, your chances of doing that, catching a 20 pounder, will increase if you're prepared to fish the areas where those fish are most likely to be found. And they're most likely to be in the reef because those big food items are there for them. They're there for a reason. But there is a bit of a challenge to it. But if you're keen on hunting like I am, this style of fishing is very much similar to that. You're really hunting the fish out. It's not a numbers game. So I might get a fish every 5th or 6th time. Better fishermen than me might have more success. But you know, if you're prepared to put in the time and the effort and get to know some areas, and hopefully some of this knowledge in addition to will help you have some success. So the first thing I'll show you that Leon showed me is this neat little rig holder. It's a bit battered and broken, but basically it's just some foam matting that's rolled up and then wrapped up with duct tape. And then I've poked some holes in the top of it, and you can see your sinker sits down in there. Okay. Sinker in here, wrap the line around, and then your hook in here. And so you can prepare half a dozen rigs before you go fishing. When you're out there and the tide's pushing in and you've got limited time, you don't want to be spending it tying up rigs. You want these pre-tied before you go out. That'll improve your fishing time. The longer you're soaking a bait, the more chance you'll get a fish. So let's have a look at the rig that Leon would use in the rocks. So this is just a modified ledger rig. You'd have your shock leader on my left to your right, going to a brass ring. He wouldn't use swivels because he believed they were a weak point. And then you notice that there's a very short drop to the sinker, and there is a very good reason for that. And then we have a very short trace to our hook, and there's a very good reason for such a short trace. And then I use a 4-bar-0 Gamakatsu octopus hook. I believe he would use a 5-bar-0, but that's a point of personal preference. So let's talk about why Leon designed his rig this way. For 2 reasons. One is to minimise gear loss, so snagging, and also to minimise fish loss, typically due to snagging. So shock leader, I would use a 30-pound shock leader. Shock leader is where I spend some money, is on the Maxima Ultra Green line. It's got a very good abrasion resistance. And that joins onto the brass ring, and then the drop to the sinker, that's also 30 pound. And then the trace to the hook is typically 50 pound. You could use 60 if you want. I've never been bitten off by a snapper ever on 50-pound line. when you get snagged, 99% of the time it is your sinker that gets snagged. You can imagine all the boulders we have in our reefy areas, and all the little gaps are perfect for a sinker to slip down in between and you're stuck. You might be able to pull it out with brute strength, but unlikely. So let's say you've cast out, you're snagged, and then a fish comes along and hits your bait. What that fish is going to do, if it doesn't rip the hook out, it's going to snap off the sinker, because remember, this is 30-pound line to your sinker and it's short, so there's a lot more pressure on it. And then you've got a longer length of 50-pound line. The length gives greater stretch, and obviously the breaking strain is greater. So what's going to break first is the sinker. There's been plenty of snapper I've caught that don't have a sinker attached, because they've obviously, it's been snagged when the fish is hit and they've just snapped that off. Okay, let's say a fish comes along and takes your bait. Everything tightens up. You notice how that sinker lifts up. Tightens, sinker lifts up. Okay, so even if that sinker is down in between some rocks, there's a good chance that if it's not really snagged and you're relying on the fish snapping that sinker off, that when things tighten up and you hook your fish, that sinker comes up out of the rocks. Okay, so you've hooked your fish, you're attached, and that fish is swimming around. That sinker is dangling just below its mouth, or sort of just below its mouth line. Okay, if you had a really long trace to that sinker, then that sinker is going to be getting dragged all through the bottom by your fish. And if that hits the bottom and gets snagged, it could rip the hook out of the fish's mouth. It might not. I mean, the fish might just snap it off. But wouldn't it be better for that not to happen in the first place? That sinker is, the line's tight, and that sinker is sitting alongside the fish rather than, you know, dragging through the rocks. It's a far better scenario. So that's one reason for having such a short drop to the sinker.